Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome back to the channel with some more Victory at Sea coverage for you guys. Today, we're going to take a look and get started with our little mini series here on motor torpedo boats. So, we recently just took a look at submarines in the game, so it makes sense to follow up with the other sort of small ships here and some of the special rules and other things surrounding them. So, thanks so much again for hanging out, guys. Before we get started, make sure you smash that like and subscribe just to help us continue to grow. Also, if you do feel like supporting the channel a little bit more, check out the link in the description there to head over to Warlord, and anything you guys pick up does come back and support the channel a little bit. So, appreciate everybody who's been doing that. So, let's dive right in. So, can't even say it, motor torpedo boats, or MTBs, as they're going to typically be referred to. Basically, any combination of these smaller ships. So, more famous ones like the Elcos and Higgins and stuff like that for the U.S. But as we see here, so like S boats, E boats, and stuff for the Germans, Vospers for the Brits, and so on. There's so many things that are out there. So, and as you are probably aware of, but in case you aren't, there's also Cruel Seas by Warlord, which specifically focuses on ships of this scale and kind of brings them into a larger scale to play in, but really just focuses in on these smaller ship actions and coastal engagements and stuff like that you can still do in this scale, certainly with Victory at Seas, but it's a little more detailed and intimate and up close in Cruel Seas. So, but and no reason you can't pair the two games together where you have maybe larger fleet battles, but then you can play separate, smaller engagements with these types of ships in Cruel Seas. So, but anyway, so MTB sections here is how they're going to be organized. And basically, one base will have two boats on there, as you'll see on any of those you pick up. And they do have some slightly different characteristics, which is what we'll start off in this first video today. We'll cover about roughly half of the information here for the MTBs, and then continue on with some of the other things in a subsequent video. So, commission, basically the year that they came into service and when they can be used. Flank speed. However, as you'll see, they're generally going to be much faster and more maneuverable than the larger ships out there, especially like slow plotting things like battleships and stuff like that. The armor, basically how much punishment they can take, which again isn't really going to be much given their size, and that they emphasize speed over protection. Smoke, some do have that ability to drop smoke screens. AA battery, all attack dice basically will be used with a local trait because again, there's by and large machine guns, maybe some lighter like auto cannons and stuff like that. Nothing like as massive as some of the bigger things on capital ships. Torps, many of them do of course have torpedo attacks, so we'll see that. Weapons, and then any other systems that they might have, so light guns, rockets even in some cases, certain traits, some even carry depth charges and stuff like that for hunting subs. So lots of information, lots of little things that they can do there. So despite their small size, they do have a good, or I should say a valid purpose and use. So next up are weapon systems, and this kind of is just a generic breakdown of what it'll look like in the respective nations' army lists in the book. Now, unfortunately, these guys don't get stat cards like pretty much all the other ships do, and I think that's a bit of a miss on Warlord's part there. But there's any number of people out there, whether you check various forums and Facebook groups and other stuff like that, that are making custom ones, or you can come up with your own. But I feel like that's just something that could have been still accomplished there. But anyway, weapon systems. They all have the characteristics shown on the right, and the number of attack dice or local for those weapons are listed where they you would typically expect them to be. So this is just again something generic here, but very familiar to the other ship stats. So you shouldn't struggle to understand or read this if you're familiar with the game already. So the last thing we'll take a look at briefly today in this video is the movement phase, and then the subsequent video will focus on gunnery, how to deal with these guys, and other things there. So in a similar way to aircraft, all MTB sections in a fleet are moved at the same time. So after all ships on the table have been moved, but before aircraft, the player who won initiative must then choose whether to move their MTBs first or force the opponent to do so. Now keep in mind, again, there's no back and forth. It's basically you move all or your opponent moves all at once. So definitely factor that into your decision if you are the one that gets to make that. So there's no takebacks really. So So once it's made, all sections in a fleet are moved at the same time. Then the opponent fleet does, or opposing fleet does the same with theirs. And then MTB sections can move in any direction, taking as many turns. Again, it would just be absolutely tedious to have to force these teeny tiny ships and bases to follow the standard turning procedures. So just given how small and fast and maneuverable they are, it just makes more sense to essentially let them move and turn however they want, essentially. Um, they have no facing or firing arcs as ships do, and may launch attacks in any direction. All measurements are made from the bridge of the frontmost ship in the section. So just keep that in mind. Again, some things differing a little bit here from capital ships and other things like subs. An MTB section may never perform an order. Okay, so another thing to keep in mind there. So, but yeah, so some small differences so far as we've seen, but overall pretty manageable. And again, the fact that they essentially all move in their own dedicated phase helps keep that pretty simple as well. So you know that there's essentially like the MTB phase, which will be before the aircraft, and then they'll get to do their things. So hopefully that makes sense for you guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Again, we'll cover gunnery and everything else in the next video. But yeah, appreciate everybody hanging out. Drop us a like and a subscribe, like we said earlier, and let us know in the comments, guys, what your experience has been with the MTBs so far, how they've performed, how many do you typically run, and just various things like that. It'd be interesting to hear your stories so far. So thanks so much for hanging out, guys, and hope you have a good one. We'll see you in the next one.